Who are you and why do we care?
Good. That's a great question. Uh, 10-year tournament director, chief business officer of the Atlanta Open. So ATP Tour event that just ended its run here in Atlanta this past week.
Okay, well, that's what you do, but who are you? You're a father. You got a couple of kids, right? And what's about Eddie?
Grew up in Rome, Georgia. High level junior player. Ended up going to NC State University on a tennis scholarship. So played for the Wolfpack in the ACC. Was fortunate enough to make a career then in tennis. Worked for the USTA Southern Section for about 8 years out of college, and then got hired by a sports media company called Athlon Sports. Did that for about 15 years before the opportunity presented itself to get back in tennis and lead the team running the Atlanta Open ATP event here in Atlanta.
And Athlon Sports, I've seen that before. Is that Darren Potke? Does that name sound familiar? I think.
Well, Darren's head of USG Georgia, so he's the executive director for USG Georgia. But Athlon Sports niche was always that preseason preview magazines. So football, baseball, basketball, NASCAR, no tennis. But it's kind of that first look that you kind of internet, you could only get at the newsstand, and you wanted to get that magazine, and then we expanded into social. But I was VP of sales for Athlon and loved every minute of that. But at the end of the day, my heart, my passion is tennis, and only 10 ATP events in the U.S. So a chance to lead that team for 10 years from 2013 to 23.
And that's something you say yes to. Hey, would you like to do this? And I think the answer is yes. There's not a lot of hesitation there. And you just won. I say just won this year, being 2024, as a tennis player. You're still playing, so you won the Senior Invitational. Is that right?
Yeah, I've actually had a good run. Now that I stepped away from the tournament last year, I've actually had more time to play than watch and promote tennis. But won the Atlanta Senior Invitational in the 50 doubles. Also got invited to represent Georgia in the Callan Cup, in which each of the 9 southern states puts their best adult male and female players together. And it's on a 55s team with Stephen Enix and Ryan Blake and John Hanna and me, and we came home with the trophy there. And then there's another event called the Donoff Cup, in which each of the 17 sections then puts their best teams together. And so I represented Team Southern, and we actually won the Donoff Cup. So it's been a good run so far. If the body keeps holding up, then still love to compete.
Hey, we always thought John Hanna was the magic behind some of those teams, Bobby, but I think it's Eddie. I'm seeing the consistency here.
I'm experiencing technical difficulties.
I was going to say, I was going to hand it off to Bobby, because I know Bobby's probably got questions as well.
Now keep talking. I'm breaking up.
Okay. Yeah, and if you need to cut out, Bobby, it's fine. We can chop it and put it all back together.
I think I got it. Am I there again?
Yeah. Nice.
All right. Well, that was fun. I got excited. I haven't seen Ryan Blake in forever. So Ryan was always one of my favorite people, and he is a first-class character. And another perfect example, he plays tennis and makes all his money in basketball.
Exactly. Yeah. And he and I, I've known him since I was probably 12 years old. He's probably one of the first guys ever played in junior tennis. And it's fun to see where we all end up in life. And he's just a great guy and been a lifelong great friend.
Yeah.
And that's good when we see those times. We say, hey, oh my gosh, we met back when we were kids. And we get a chance to then, whether we grow up together, whether we get apart and come back and we run into each other again as professionals, as we're older. I know with my wife, we ran into a couple of kids, I would say, 2 that I coached 20 years ago and got them into college tennis, and we see them again and say, hey, how you doing? It's great. We've got kids now, and it's all kind of an exciting scenario to be able to say we knew each other back then. But even more so with you, Eddie, with somebody with those guys like Blake and Hannah, to be able to say we've been doing this together for maybe more than 20 years.
Definitely in Ryan's case for sure. John's right there, and Stephen Enix as well. So we're all aging gracefully together.
The fun things is still being able to play at a high level is uncommon. Bobby, what was the statement you made recently in something? It was about most people, 70%, whatever the number is, of Division I tennis players never play again. Is that right?
Yeah, never pick up a racket again. Yeah.
And that's
Wow, I did not know that, and that's
Yeah.
disappointing. That's really
It is really
disappointing.
disappointing.
Such a, I mean, I play tennis. Yeah, look, I still love to go play a tournament here and there, but it's really for the health and wellness. I mean, you can get such a great singles workout in an hour. That's both, such a great cardio and aerobic and anaerobic. So I'd love to still get a great workout.
Yeah, and I think those of us that know the health benefits, and we at Go Tennis, we promote that kind of thing because we want more people in the sport. And it's one thing from your point of view, and I want to ask about some of your experiences at the ATP tournament level to be able to see as much as you have, because we promote the health benefits and we want people to get into it. And let's age well. Tennis players live what, 7 to 10 years longer on average than other players. And I don't know if that's actual causal or just relational, but still it says something and it means a lot. And what do you see when we've got the players that are in our 50s, in our 60s, and as we get older and we can still play, those seem to be the healthier people in our world here. Now, is that just because we're biased toward tennis, Eddie?
I think so. I mean, I think I heard somebody say you don't stop playing tennis because you get old. You get old because you stop playing tennis. So there you go. So I choose to play tennis, not to get old.
That's a great statement. I like that a lot. And that's encouraging to get people to keep playing. And even if many as we get older, maybe transitioning into pickleball or finding something a little less difficult on the body, fighting through injuries, whatever that is, the health benefits are still important, because maybe we take some of these younger people that are coming into pickleball and then say, hey, maybe tennis is an even better workout. And that can be a good entry level. But I do want to ask about your time specifically at the ATP event here in Atlanta, because there's good response, there's negative, it's in town, it's hot, it's rainy. I mean, recently, the most recent Atlanta Open, they didn't finish their finals matches till 3:00 in the morning the next day. I mean, weather, it happens, right? It's an outdoor event. But for you, Eddie, could I presume to ask the rewarding, what's the most rewarding thing that you could consider, or anything rewarding that says you spent 10 years experiencing this? What did you get out of it? What did you learn, rather than just spending your time working to make sure the players and the sponsors are taken care of?
I think the most rewarding thing for anybody that has a leadership opportunity, whatever that is, any sort of company, you want to leave things better than you find it. And so I'm very proud of the 10 years of building it every year to be bigger and better. And of course, you guys know that was an empty parking lot. And so we bring a world-class tennis tournament every year and we build it, and everything there is temporary. And it was very satisfying to get bigger and better every year, but also when you would have fans there that wouldn't know that it was temporary. And the other thing that we really tried to abide by is we kind of had a team motto that we wanted to be a party and a tennis match broke out. So that was kind of our philosophy, because we didn't want people to have to, we weren't going to get Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. I mean, we're never going to get those guys. And so we had to make sure it was that sports event on an annual basis that people wanted to be a part of, whether you're a sports fan or not. We knew we were going to get the passionate fans like the three of us. We're going to go. But how do you get those casual fans to go? And It's the easy parking, it's the restaurants, it's the shops. And I also will tell people that part of my motivation when I started was that I was fortunate in my career to attend Super Bowls and Final Fours and Masters and Pro Bowls. But the greatest annual sporting event is the US Open tennis. And it's because it's New York City, it's night matches, it's people watching, it's restaurants, it's shops, and it's great world-class tennis. So we really want to be that mini US Open there at Atlantic Station with unbelievable Midtown skyline views and easy parking and restaurants and shops and great world-class tennis. And you don't care who's playing. I mean, yes, you want your marquee players to win, but that's a bonus. You can't control the weather. So you control what you can control. It's Atlanta, it's July, it's hot. So we would strategically play all of our marquee matches at night. So that way it's in the evenings down there, very pleasant. I mean, even with humidity, if you're from the South, it was very pleasant down there. And we found with our research that people that had come to the tournament, the surveys showed that it was never an issue about getting there. Or parking, because there's 7,000 covered parking spaces at Atlantic Station. I think it was $12 or $14 a day, which is you go to any other sporting event, that parking is going to cost you $40, $50. So the parking was not an issue, and there's 7 different ways to get into that parking, Atlantic Station from. So it was really our goal to try to get the people that had never been there before, because once they came, we felt like that we had a really good shot of them coming back.
I like that ending where it's, if we can get them here once. And I think that's kind of a tennis coach expectation. If I come from my point of view with Bobby, is if I could just get you on court, then I know you're going to come back because you're going to like the product. And I think a lot of the people that might complain about the Atlanta Open, or the Atlanta people that aren't going unless it's Roger, they're just not going to show up. And they don't like the drive. It's not about parking. I mean, Bobby lives over an hour away, and that's just getting to the city. I mean, getting down there. So you can give Bobby all the parking you want. He's still got to drive an hour, and that's a commitment. And there's a lot more of those complaints where once I go down for the first time and I see that party where the tennis match broke out, and I see it's sometimes there are empty seats up there, but that doesn't mean the place is empty. The rest of that facility is packed, and people are to the tents, and they got drinks and the fans, and not the fans, the people, but the fans to keep themselves cool. And it really is a great place to hang out. And we went down there 3 times just this past the last episode of it, and we watched very little tennis, and we were meeting people and talking and really enjoying the atmosphere. So I think that's probably it. It's, if we can get you down here the first time. Is that the hardest part, though? Because if you're going to say, come down to our event, we've got great parking, it's kind of a strange offer, right?
Yeah, but it's more than just the parking. When you come through those front gates and you got that music stage going, and partnering with the Giving Kitchen, that was one of our charity partners that helped bring some of Atlanta's top restaurants and chefs. I mean, Atlanta's a foodie community, so being able to have Ford Fry and some of his restaurants over the years featured there. I mean, all of those were kind of the secret sauce for us. And then I mentioned the mini US Open earlier. So the US Open is men and women. We're a men's only event. So I'm also very proud of some of the entrepreneurial things we did, such as kicking off the only men's tournament in the world that kicked off with a women's exhibition. And that's sold out every year. And Atlanta has a very affluent African-American community. And bringing Venus Williams that first year to play Jeannie Bouchard, sellout. Bringing Sloane Stevens in to play Madison Keys, sellout. Bringing Coco Gauff, right as her breakout year, and actually played 2 different sessions, sellout. So then getting folks to come that had never come before, that then wanted to come back and see the men play, later on in the week, was just another piece, to the whole equation that we were trying to create.
Yeah, I think we've been trying for years to make sure we help push that idea of you don't come down for whatever you want, stay for the tennis, to where it isn't necessarily we weren't worried about who was playing. Now it's nice to see the big guys play, and it's nice to see those big names, but it really has been a fantastic event, despite some of the complaints. And again, like you said, Atlanta, it's hot. You can't control the weather. There's only so much you can do. And
the one thing I learned going to ATP meetings over the 10 years is that every event has a complaint about its date on the calendar. So, I mean, you can talk about Miami and Indian Wells, and even this past year, we talked about the weather Atlanta got. Well, Rome, the Italian Open, and Madrid both were just downpours. And then even the French and Wimbledon had to deal with weather issues. So every event has issues with their date. July, the end of July for Atlanta, the way the calendar is to help have the guys start their U.S. Open preparation on the hard courts was really the best date for us, because then you start getting into August. Well, guess what? A lot of school systems go back to school. I mean, it's starting August, and so then your volunteer base isn't as good. And that was something, our volunteers were second to none. Our ball person team, and again, I watch matches on TV or live, and I'm looking at things that most fans aren't looking at just because of the operational promoter nature of me. Our ball person team, fabulous. Our ushers, our drivers, our ticket takers, just so much passion, so much knowledge. And you talked about the finals ending at 3 a.m. They were there to the end, and just kudos to our volunteer team that really helped it get to where it was. And again, people need to understand Atlanta Open isn't going away because of the lack of success. Is simply a casualty of the ATP Tour calendar, with the 1000s all going from 9 days to 12. So when you add 3 days to Cincinnati and 3 days to Canada, that's 6 days in the summer. That's a week. So the summer got squeezed a week, and as a result, unfortunately, even more of a history at Newport, Rhode Island, with that International Tennis Hall of Fame losing its event. And so we can bow out gracefully with our heads high, knowing that we left creating a very positive event.
And that's good. I appreciate that explanation, because we'll end up getting that question for years to come. What happened? Oh, I'll bet they ended it because it wasn't well attended. We put an article last year that said, don't let the empty seats fool you about the Atlanta event, because that place is a party, and there's also a tennis match going on in the big space. But in this case, it's a good explanation to be able to say the ATP level decisions are why the calendar changes. It's not like some other tournament got chosen instead of this one. So GF Sports specifically was able to bid on creating new events. Can you describe that for me? Do you know how that played out?
Yeah, I mean, very simply, if any tournament owner owned two 250s, they had the opportunity to retire those two 250s, or in essence, give them back to the tour, who would then sunset them. And in exchange for that, they would be rewarded with a 500. So that's why GF, with Dallas being a 250 and Atlanta being a 250, those two events are now gone. But in exchange for that, GF now has one 500 that will remain in Dallas in that same kind of February indoor time slot. And but there's other events and owners that have 250, more than one 250, that decided to keep them. Buenos Aires and Antwerp, for an example. But there wasn't. It was just, again, the way Atlanta fell on the calendar. That was really the only scenario that would work.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense, and I appreciate that explanation, because it's difficult for some people to understand those business level decisions if we don't know. And most people aren't paid. We still have on our social media, we've got people saying, "Oh, I wonder what happened," when they're commenting on the explanation of what happened. So clearly people aren't actually paying attention and trying to learn. They just want to complain.
What you'll notice is next year in 2025, when those summer 1000s go to 12 days, DC, that is now always historically followed Atlanta, is moving up a week. So DC will now take the Atlanta week on the calendar, moving up, because again, they got squeezed to move forward a week because of the change.
In Cincinnati, right? Got it. That makes sense. Okay, Bobby, I learned what I needed to learn. I really wanted to hear that that tournament explanation again. You got anything for Eddie?
Well, and I think speaking to just to take it one step further, I'd love to see in 5 years what Atlantic Station has to say with the loss of the tournament, because I'm like you, I've been in Atlanta 32 years now, and a lot of things we take for granted. And I've said it 1,000 times. Like, I grew up in New York, approximately the same 35 miles from New York City as I am now from Atlanta, and I visit Atlanta far more than I ever did New York City. And I went to the tournament last Wednesday, and it rained, but what it really did for me was recreate a lot of memories of, just silly things that my daughter and I had done at Atlantic Station, and said, and now I'm gonna have to make an effort to get to Atlantic Station. There's not something yearly that is going to bring me there. So, I'll be curious to see how the stores make out 5 years from now, the long-term business legacy of losing something that, as you said, I think far too many people took for granted because of 1,000 excuses. Once you get there, you sit there and go, and of course, I love the whole idea of making a party. I screamed that from the towers when I was involved with the senior tour to a lot of deaf ears. And it was very frustrating because, Atlanta is a tier 1 city. And as Eddie said, I was disappointed last Wednesday because I couldn't get into the stadium because of the rain. So I had to get to eat the food. I want the food trucks. That's part of the experience. And I didn't get to enjoy that. So, I think that's going to be interesting 5 years from now when we realize, you always miss it more when it's gone, unfortunately.
Well, I'll say, just to add and echo what you're saying, Bobby, about Atlantic Station, fabulous partner. Having them as a site partner where Atlanta is a tier 1. It's a major DMA, just like Dallas, New York, Houston, LA, Chicago. Atlanta was the only market in the U.S. for an ATP event that took place right in the heart of the major DMA. I mean, even New York is in Queens, it's in the burbs. Yes. Even with our GF Sports, our Dallas event, it's going to be out in Frisco. And so, Indian Wells in Miami, Miami's out at Miami Gardens where where the football stadium is. So Atlantic Station was such a great partner, having a hotel right there on site. Most ATP events around the world, you got to get in your car and drive 15 minutes as a player to get to the practice courts. Another 15 minutes to get to the venue. We had guys playing their match and walking back to the hotel after their matches. Didn't even, want or need a ride. And you could go to Yard House or Atlantic Grill or Publix and you'd see them there. And Atlantic Station told us that outside of the Christmas holiday week in December, that our Atlanta Open was their second best week of the year in terms of business for their retailers, the restaurants, and all the retailers there. So it was a win-win. They were fabulous partners, and that was part of our success. Having that stadium right off the interstate, there's 675,000 cars a day that go by that intersection. So that was basically a billboard for the tennis tournament, and Atlantic Station, one and the same during our 9-day run every year.
Yeah, Truist did pretty well, right? They built a building there. It was the perfect poster.
It was BB&T, yeah, and BB&T as a newer bank in the Atlanta market really wanted to own something, and the ability to own and title with us, with their Georgia headquarters being right back there, and every backdrop shot of the stadium had the BB&T building. And then when BB&T acquired SunTrust, then they created the Truist brand, and that ran for 2 years before that ran its course.
And that's we were driving past the other night, and my wife looked at me, and we're driving by, and it's so cool to see, because it's in the same place that they put the Cirque du Soleil there when there's time and space, and they're in town, and driving by and we're like, well, why don't they have a big billboard saying, the Atlanta Open? I'm like, I think that pretty much is the billboard. I mean, you drive by and you see a giant tennis stadium. I think you can pretty much figure out what's going on there.
Well, I don't think they did it this year, but and probably because this was the last year. But in years past, yeah, we had a big billboard on the back of the stadium that had our web address and dates, so that way people would know what was going on. Hey, what is that thing over there? So you kind of knew what it was.
Yeah, and you mentioned about getting there, and I remember multiple times trying to get to the U.S. Open, and it just felt like the whole morning was just getting there. The train and however it wasn't easy. And we were driving down recently, and you go down, and we come from the north, so we go down, we take a right, we park, we walk across the street, we're in. It's fantastic.
And that's part of it. All of us, our human nature is you don't want to be stressed out getting to a location and be stressed out standing in line to get into wherever you're going, whether it's a movie or a concert or whatever. So again, we tried to run a tennis tournament the way we'd want to go to event ourselves.
That's a good way to look at it. I think Bobby and I have a lot of conversations with people in the tennis world, and a lot of those solutions, a lot of those decisions that become good for others are when someone does something that they would want. How would I want to experience this thing? Whether we're creating a magic ball machine or whatever it is that we're doing for tennis, we solve a problem for ourselves, which is, all right, when I go to an event, I want to be able to get there easily. I want to be able to afford it. I want good food. You just go down the list and say, this is what I want. Well, how hard is it to do these things? And as we've said before, even just now, oh yeah, and there's a tennis match going on over there.
Exactly.
So I will presume again to ask another question that puts you on the spot a little bit. Do you have, when you think back over 10 years of doing this in Atlanta, do you have a story that would be something kind of, I don't know, it doesn't have to be funny, doesn't even have to be witty, but something interesting that happened that somebody else might not have experienced? Because we see the tennis and we can see that on TV. And when we go, we can experience the food and the bands and the excitement and the courtside. But is there, from your point of view, is there anything you've experienced? I'm sure you got 1,000 stories, but is there maybe a favorite that you could share with us?
Yeah, I do, but I'd also like to go back to your question about the rewarding, the fulfillment side. And I talked about wanting to leave it better than you found it. But it's also very rewarding to see all these young Americans who had their first shot in Atlanta and where they are now. I mean, Taylor Fritz needed 2 different wild cards from us early on in his career, and now he spent part of last year top 10. Seeing what Chris Eubanks did last year, getting to the quarterfinals of Wimbledon, and our commitment to college and having a college night, giving him that opportunity, and seeing where he is now. Francis Tiafoe's first win ever as a professional tennis player was in Atlanta in the qualifying because of a wild card that we gave to him. I'll never forget Riley Opelka's father, George, crying in the stands when Riley made the semifinals of his first event on a wild card. Tommy Paul, same thing. And last but not least, Ben Shelton. So Ben got his first chance to experience pro tennis in Atlanta my last year in 2022. He had some Atlanta connections with his dad, Brian, being from, living in Atlanta and being the coach at Georgia Tech before he went to Florida. Ben had just won the NCAAs, and he was very pleasantly persistent with me, Ben, to his credit, on wanting a wild card. And I finally said, Ben, you've earned it. Congratulations. You're going to get to experience playing an ATP Tour level. And my only ask is that you always think fondly of Atlanta whenever and so I think that helped him come back the last 2 years to play because of that opportunity there. So just, I'm a American homer. I love the Americans to do well, and it's great to be a small part of the success that they've had and where they are now. But your question about what's one funny story, memory, and it kind of goes right in line with talking about being a party and a tennis match breaks out. Well, one year we had the Commodores play on our music stage, and we did it on Saturday night of the qualifying. So we actually played matches, and then we actually craned a stage in over the stadium to put it down onto the court because we didn't have room to fit it through the opening on the temporary stadium. And then we put down a protective surface on the court, and there was no damage to the stadium where the stage was. But where we screwed up was all the tables that we had, kind of champagne tables that we put on the court, and they left little indentions on the stadium court. And so when we pulled up our protective turf, we saw all these little semicircles on the court at Saturday night at midnight, and we're supposed to have qualifying matches the next morning. And this is where the tennis gods look so favorably upon us, as well as having the right partners. And Mike Imbernone and Signature Tennis, who I told him if I have another child, I was going to name it after him, because they drove down probably 45 minutes that night from the burbs to look at the court. And Sunday morning, there they were. And again, the weather cooperated. They were able to put 2 coats down on stadium to have the courts then dried, ready to go by Monday to start the main draw. So we had to move that. Luckily, it's only 2 matches on stadium for that Sunday qualifying, so we could move that. But that's a funny story of us wanting to be music promoters. And William King, who's one of the founding members of the Commodores, who's a great tennis player, a dear friend, we still laugh about that, William and the Commodores played, but we had to resurface the court quickly the next morning. So there's a little fun inside story.
Bobby, I can just see Mike's face right now.
I'm gonna have to call him on that one.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd love to hear his side of it.
I have to call him on that one.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we're calling Mike.
Yeah.
Good story.
The offer still stands. If I have another child, it's gonna be named after him. First name Signature, last name Tennis.
Bernard Gonzalez.
Yeah.
That's good. And then those are just things that I say we go through, but that directors and leaders and somebody like yourself, you're running a tournament like that, and every time there is something to fix. There is some fire to put out, hopefully not literally, but there is something that's going to happen that you've got to figure it out and just make it work.
It's a 9-day event, so you have to make decisions quickly and move on. You have to try to process the information that you need to make a decision quickly and move on, right or wrong. But yes, it's every day was problem solving quickly, whatever that might be. Some things minor, some things major. And I'm giving you a little bit of tidbits of my management style, but I just told everybody, hey, look, ducks on a pond. People are like, what does that mean? Ducks on a pond. I said, well, when you see a duck on a pond, they look calm, cool, and collected, but underneath the water, there's a lot of paddling going on. And so we're going to be calm on the surface, and underneath the surface, if we have to know that we're problem solving, but we're going to just be calm, cool, and collected because we're running a tennis tournament. We're not curing cancer. We're not trying to save a life. People are coming here to get away from the issues that they're having in their normal life, to have some good entertainment value here. And so we just wanted to be calm, cool, and collected, make decisions quickly, and move on.
Bobby, I'm trying to decide if that's like your management style.
Oh, I'm a lot more mellow than you would think when it comes to important decisions. Yes, I can fly off a handle, but no, I'm a firm believer, as I tell everybody, crisis management, you do not go faster, you go slower. You bring it down and find its core. I'm excited. I've learned 2 things today: that disco not only killed Comiskey Park, and you're too young, Shaun, but Eddie might remember that when they had a disco night at Comiskey Park, a baseball field, and destroyed the place. And Ducks on a Pond also has a baseball. That was when there's runners on base, you got to knock the ducks in the pond in. So, baseball and tennis, it's why I'm here.
It's true. And we're happy to have you from baseball, because baseball doesn't deserve you. So, Eddie, what's next for you? What do you got coming up? Anything? You just being retired and hanging out with the family?
You know, it's been a great year. You know, the tennis is so all encompassing. It's like once the tournament ends, you're already in the midst for the following year.
Oh, sure.
You got to do all your sponsor recaps in the fall. Then you've got your year-end ATP meetings, whether it's at the U.S. Open or in November at the Tour Finals. So the next thing you know, it's the holidays, and then you're going on sale after that, and then you're trying to finalize players. And then you go on sale in March and your media day, and then boom, there's the tournament again. And so I always thought it was funny when people ask me, well, Eddie, what do you do the rest of the year? You know, when you're running the tournament. I said, well, it's a year-round job, and then, oh, by the way, then guess what? You can't have a tournament without sponsors and ticket sales. So in sponsor, corporate development, that's what you're doing on a year-round basis. Loved every minute of it. But with all that being said, I've just had a lot of time this year to play more tennis, as we talked about, travel, get to go to some really cool places that I've been wanting to go to. And, I don't say that, no to people when they approach me. I just say maybe not right now. And I'll always listen. But as of right now, look, it's been a great year. It's been fun to be a fan again and not have the responsibilities, but still, it's so gratifying to go back. And Peter was gracious to invite me back on Monday night for the Legends exhibition to see what I call my tennis family out there, for the volunteers and the sponsors and the ticket holders and the vendors and ATP staff. So it was very, reminiscing. It was fun.
Good. And you've got a couple of kids that are athletes. Your daughter plays some tennis. Your son's playing some baseball, if I can go personal.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. My daughter played junior tennis and went to UNC Charlotte and played for 2 years. And then there was a coaching change. So she actually transferred to Georgia Tech and played there and graduated. And she's now, I guess if I put in a plug, it would be for her because she's found a way to be a full-time content creator, social media influencer with almost 60,000 Instagram followers. Gabulous Gabs that started, her name's Gabriella, and she started during COVID making fun of herself, learning how to play golf. And it's turned into golf, food, fashion, and travel. And so I'm very proud of her being entrepreneurial, now having an agent and some great clients that are paying her to help promote their brands. But she said recently, Dad, why don't we go back and play the father-daughter grass court championships in Boston at Longwood Cricket Club? And Longwood is one of those just unique tennis places on earth that any tennis fan has to go see, along with Newport over in Newport, Rhode Island. The other one I'll put up there is La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club over outside of San Diego. Those are, to me, but we're going to go do that. And then my son also went to Georgia Tech, played baseball, and he got drafted by the Pirates in the 5th round of the 22 draft. So he's in his second full year. He's now at the AA level, playing in Altoona, Pennsylvania, in Western PA for the Altoona Curve. And so it's been fun being there to support him, and nothing will make me happier than to have his goals and dreams come true of making it to the major leagues one year. He's a fast lefty center field leadoff guy. So he's a high on base guy, fast, and then let those big boppers behind him, bring him in. So yeah, it's been very fun to travel and then support my kids.
I'm sure Bobby's going to want to look for the invitation to go see some baseball, because I think Bobby's got more of a baseball niche than I do.
The more the merrier. Let's do it.
I love it.
And so, Bobby, you got anything else for Eddie? Because I'll hit him with King of Tennis if we think we've got everything covered. And
no, because I want to hear this too. So I'm anxious to hear what Eddie has to say about King of Tennis. So
excited about the King of Tennis question. So, Eddie, I appreciate your time, and it's fun to get to know you a little bit better, and also share with our audience kind of what it looks like to run an event like that, like the Atlanta Open. It's got to be a unique job, and maybe sometimes many of us think we have unique jobs, or our job is difficult or interesting, but that's one of those situations that is got to be fulfilling. And I appreciate you sharing some of that with us and sharing a little bit about yourself personally That's great. But I will ask, and I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I'm gonna look for something great. But that's just our high expectations, and that's just how much we think of you, of course. But Eddie, if you were king of tennis, whether it's Atlanta, the world, any scale, whether it's professional or social at any level, is there anything in tennis that you would do or change?
Well, let me just say thank you for having me. Really appreciate what you guys are doing. So keep it up, and just remembering me when you guys are hanging there with Portnoy and doing it. So keep doing your thing. I really appreciate it. It's part of the ecosystem. We need you guys. So, but if I'm king of tennis, as I said earlier, I'm such passionate about American tennis. And when you look at Sharapova when she came on the scene, and what an influx of young Russian female players that we're still experiencing. When you see what Venus and Serena did, and now Coco's doing for the female African American community, it's just a shame we haven't had a male Grand Slam champion since 2003 with Andy Roddick. So if I was king of tennis, I would love to have an American male win a Grand Slam event, preferably the U.S. Open, because I think that just the global appeal of the Grand Slams, I think we'd see another influx of great young male athletes choose tennis, where right now they may not be choosing. I don't think our best male athletes are playing tennis. I think they're going to soccer, they're going to basketball, baseball, and other sports. And I would love to, if I were king of tennis, have one of our male American players win the U.S. Open, and I think that would help us see a big boom for years to come.
All right, so Bobby, evidently he agrees with you more than he agrees with me in that the famous tennis player is the thing that drives new players into the sport. So it looks like he's leaning toward that. But I will ask Eddie, as king of tennis, that seems more like grand wizard of tennis, that you get to kind of snap your fingers and say American. And you are tournament director, so you could probably rig it to work out that way. But is there a way we accomplish that? Because in this case, how do we get the Americans ready for that? So if we come more from my point of view and saying, I think volume and quality of player will create the next American Grand Slam champion, I kind of view it from the other direction. Would you have, as king, what are your orders? What are you going to tell us to do to help make that happen?
Well, that's the chicken and the egg question. So it's like, all right, do we get more players and one of them is going to end up being a Grand Slam champion? Or if we were somehow to get a Grand Slam champion, do we all of a sudden have this huge swell of new players? So look, in a perfect world, it'd be both. But that's kind of why I said what I said. I would love to see one of our young American men. I think Ben is capable. I think Francis is capable. I think Taylor's capable, because Nadal is, he's at the finish line now, and Roger's done. And Djokovic, what does he have? Maybe 18 months left. Andy Murray just retired. So there's this window of opportunity, and we're seeing Alcaraz and Sinner now come to the forefront. But Yannick Sinner played in Atlanta in 2021 and lost first round. He lost first round. Now he ended up winning the doubles with Riley Opelka, and Riley, it's the only title Sinner's ever won in doubles, the only title that Riley's won. But I think our American guys are right there with them. I think they're capable. And so if we could just have that happen. And then to answer your question, Shaun, I think we got to make sure that the USTA has the proper infrastructure with the junior competitive pathway. And I'm not the right person to probably get into the weeds on that. But that is, we need that infrastructure, because, when I was growing up playing junior tennis, what was UTR? What is UT? So now UTR is something that's totally come. And now you have this ITF global tennis number. Again, I'm probably getting into some other topics of things for another day for maybe other guests. But those are the things we just have to make sure we have the right pathway, because even with the Atlanta Open, even though it's gone, pro tennis at that level is so important in the ecosystem, because you want those kids to come to those tournaments and dream to play in it one day. And we need pro tennis in the U.S. I hate to see some of these events go away, and I think there's a direct correlation to having pro tennis tournaments, having successful players, and having world champions.